Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thanks for joining our October webinar panel from wherever you may be. I'm Ingmar Zahorsky, the VP of Customer Success at ChartMogul, and I will be your host today. We're joined by two CS leaders, Diana and Steven, who have worked with many top SaaS companies, both as operators and advisors. With capital efficiency a top priority and revenue retention expansion being more challenging currently, would like to discuss how AI can add value to your customer success operations. We have prepared several questions that will guide our discussions, and I will also be able to answer any of your questions. We'll be able to answer them, so please leave them in the chat. So without further ado, Diana, could you please introduce yourself?
Sure, thanks, Ingmar. I'm Diana de Jesus, and I have been in the B2B SaaS space for about 10 years now, doing a little bit of customer-facing roles from customer experience to customer success, customer marketing. And within that time, I've worked at SaaS companies like Hotjar, AdSpoke, which was acquired by Okta, as well as a customer success platform called Catalyst. So I've seen a lot of customer success, the good, the bad, the ugly. So I'll share any stories that I can to give you more context around those things. I've also worked directly with customer success teams in health tech and ed tech, and large enterprise companies as well, to help them structure their customer success teams to help them become more efficient and to help customer success managers become more confident. So now I am the founder of a company called Strategic CS Labs. It's the evolution of my previous company, which was the Customer Success Project. And within the Strategic CS Labs community, we share a ton of resources to help you just get some practical guidance on how to be more efficient as a customer success practitioner, how to also use things like AI to help you make sense of your job, be more efficient there, and overall just feel like you're a little bit in control, because customer success can sometimes be a little overwhelming.
Thank you, Diana. Steven, could you round us off with the introductions, please?
Sure thing. Steven Lewandowski. Hi, nice to meet everybody. Dialing in from Berlin, Germany. I've also, like Diana, spent basically a decade now in B2B SaaS. Started into my first customer success job as a customer success manager, I think 11 years ago. Spent all my life in IT, in support and customer success roles. And started my customer success career at Signavio, was the first customer success manager, built up the team and led it up until the SAP acquisition after 9 years. So then moved into the HubSpot customer success manager role for DACH and grew the team there before becoming the first chief customer officer at a company called SalesManago. During that time, saw enterprise architecture, CRM, and the e-commerce space. Started the first European customer success meetup in Berlin in 2014 before there was another one. And I'm still participating in the community events. Nowadays, focusing a lot on helping B2B SaaS companies understand the actual value they're driving. So customer-led growth strategy advices that I'm providing, aligning product and customer success with the business goals of their customers. Have been following Diana's career also very closely, so very honored today to be speaking alongside her and really looking forward to this webinar.
You, Steven.
Thank you both for joining. I think we're going to have a lot of fun. We have quite a diverse set of experiences here working in B2B SaaS. And I'd like to start by getting a baseline of where we are today. Diana, how do you see the role of AI having evolved in customer success over the past few years? And what do you see as the most promising use cases today?
So I'll be honest, I feel like when we started talking about AI, in particular tools like ChatGPT, it was like this promised land. It was supposed to revolutionize the way that we did our jobs in customer success. Like we would be for example, if I was a customer success manager, I just kick up my feet and let AI do my entire job. At least that's the picture that I think a lot of us were sold on at the beginning. And then, fast forward a little bit, it's more of like, well, it can help me do some tasks here and there. So those are the tools that are more like standalone AI tools. But then the tools that are actually within our customer success ecosystem, those are the tools that have been really ramping up their AI game and helping CSMs become more efficient. So, before we joined this session last week, we talked a little bit about just tools that have adopted AI into their tools. So for example, Gong has a really neat feature that allows you to ask it questions and almost like have this conversation, gain some insights about what you can do next. And that's already built into the tool. So we have a lot of enhancements to help us become more strategic, to help us find information faster, to help us even brainstorm. But I think the true power now is in us helping ourselves develop skills. That is where AI is right now. Again, a tool like a ChatGPT, like a Gemini can help us in, skills development if we need that practice, which, let's be honest, a lot of customer success teams are not as well funded or don't have the money that, let's say, like sales has for training. So we kind of have to train ourselves. So you can use that as a replacement there. And you can also use it for brainstorming, just to kind of, dust off the cobwebs as you're thinking through some strategies for yourself. So those are some of the things that I have seen over the years and how tools have been evolving. I did write a guide on like all these other tools that also have AI built into it, like Zoom even, or the Copilot in Salesforce, which a lot of us use. So how can those tools work for us and us not feel so intimidated to start leveraging that in our day-to-day?
So what I'm hearing is like sort of the high value points right now are really increasing productivity, and then also some skill building. I've also seen some of those products recently at SaaStr. Someone pitched a product to me by sending me actually a preparation with AI to talk to me at SaaStr. So it was quite clever, I must say. So I watched it from beginning to end. Stephen, like I know you have a lot of experience in process automation in your previous roles. How do you feel about where we are today?
Yeah, and I think I see a few similarities in the way that companies approach process management and also the AI topic. Because what we see over the years is that understanding process, especially the as-is process, defining a to-be process, automating it, and then measuring the impact of it reminds me a bit of how also some companies are now considering AI. Because in both worlds, what we saw is that sometimes the effort required to implement such a process and such a system is underestimated. And therefore sometimes is led into maybe directions which appear to have a big impact, but are not feasible in a way that actually makes sense. And therefore, I think we see that the idea of implementing it shifted, like Diana said, a bit from this, okay, it will automate everything we're doing, right? To let's identify topics where it actually makes sense for our daily work, identify personalized recommendations or repetitive tasks where it actually can help us do a better job and have a bigger impact. And I think this is also the most promising use case where we can see these AI activities actually provide some value, from improving the way we do customer health measurements, right? Making sense of data, making sense of a lot of inputs, automating follow-ups, identifying at-risk accounts, for example, and combine that probably with human interaction and still have the human for the sense making makes a lot of sense. And then, of course, and we'll probably get later to that, the whole way of doing how we call it, tech touch probably, or no touch customer success management, where you need to very well understand the use cases, the data, the interactions with the customer to actually automate it. So I usually in this space, coming from process management, have a different opinion to some others. As I say, you first need to understand the complex case to get to the automation case to really make sure you have understood that. So what I usually focus on at first, work on your most complex customer, the more complex cases, understand those, and then simplify and try to scale with these simplified insights you've gotten. So yeah, there are a lot of similarities in the approach and not trying to over-engineer what you actually want to do.
And I think this is a really good point to look at sort of the stage, the size of the company that you are and the resources that you have available, because to implement a more complex solution can require quite a lot of resources and might be actually overkill, and you actually lower the quality. So it depends what your baseline is. And if you're a very large company that has tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of customers, there might be more of an opportunity to take a part of that and then automate it. Whereas if one is a smaller company with hundreds of customers, or maybe even just 1,000, that percentage that you can actually automate efficiently and create a good experience for customers might be so small that it might not be worth your time. That was my experience when trying to look at it, being curious and trying a few different solutions where I found as a pretty technical product, as an analytics platform, having an AI chatbot trying to onboard a customer, it wasn't working well enough yet, where I felt we can, with the humans that we have, provide a much better experience, and we can afford to provide it because we don't have that many customers. So it wasn't for us like a value add at the stage where we're at. We're about so close to 70, around 70 people in the company. So yeah, like that was sort of my experiment earlier this year. Diana, what have you seen in the industry with companies that you're working with? Where could AI help with process and improving things like onboarding, talking to customers in a one-to-many fashion?
So I really like what you mentioned about the size of the company and how feasible it is to implement some of these AI enhancements in our processes. I was talking to a client of mine yesterday, actually. She works at a very big company. They don't have a lot of tools though. So they're working from spreadsheets, right? And all the data points are dumped into a spreadsheet. And so they were like, look, I just started taking this Excel course because I don't know how to like do all this like VLOOKUP and all this stuff. It's just stuff that I learned so long ago. And now I have to redo all this stuff. And then there's all this data and I don't have time to analyze it. And I was like, listen, this is what a tool like ChatGPT can step in and do. So even this big company that has, the potential to have the tools to analyze and do all these things for you because of data privacy concerns and security concerns, they opt for not using these tools and instead kind of like keep it slim and all of that. So that's a big enterprise theme that happens. It's very ongoing. But yes, we have the security concern. We can anonymize all of this information and have it help us identify what these trends are. So that's one of the things you can do. The second thing, because I just went through this myself, I also figured out a couple of little VLOOKUP formulas to add. And it's really just like helping me get to the solution faster. Instead of like, I need this thing to analyze and create everything for me. I just needed to solve this very specific thing. Like, what is this VLOOKUP formula so that I can do my job more effectively? So those are things that they seem like very simple. And it's like, why would I even waste my time looking at these things? But when you have a customer success manager, and in their case, they are at scale trying to do all of these touch points with their clients, but the data is everywhere. There's no easy way to review that data from like, as a human being, sitting down and spending hours and hours and hours and looking at this. It's just not feasible. So this is where you can automate some of those, at least identifying the trends there, or at least helping you figure out how to do your job faster. So those are just shortcuts that add up over time for your entire CS team. So definitely on the trend identification piece, when it also comes to, for example, we're thinking about our onboarding flow. One thing that I love to do when I am using a tool like ChatGPT is I'll put in my sequence, like my campaign, for example, and I'm like, here are the 5 emails I'm looking to send. Here's what I want it to do. Like, here's the call to action. Here's the main thing or the outcome I want it to have. Let me know what the pros and cons here are. Like, pretend you are, the best like campaign writer and these are your goals. Let me know what the pros and cons are. Usually when I get those results, it highlights things that I've probably not considered. It makes me think about my approach, and it helps me think about additional things that I could either add or remove. So there's a lot of little hacks that you can do to help you with your processes if we're using, let's say, a tool like a ChatGPT or a Gemini as a CSM to help us in our job and to help with any scalable motions we have in place.
That's also how we've approached this at ChartMogul, where we found very specific use cases that work for automation right now for us and add value and speed up the time for our team to work. Where one example of that would be is that we're enriching the leads with some industry data, which is GPT powered. And we built this internally with our RevOps team, where we can see on a lead exactly what ICP is this, like what industry are they working in, and some other details that are helpful for the sales team that are most of the time pretty accurately obtained and are available publicly. And I've used the same for some automation in our feature request process when we're collecting feedback from customers, where it also enriches this feedback with data that we already have about this customer, where nobody has to input that manually, where we could reduce the amount of manual data we have to input, and the rest is done through automation. So yeah, like this is a sort of also productivity. We don't really use it yet for personalization, really. I think this is a powerful piece. What do you think about this, Steven? Like, customer success always has to be really catered towards the need of a particular user and the outcomes that are specific to them, which can be different if someone works in a different department. How can this be done, and when do you think is a good time in the life cycle of a company to look at this?
I think when you look at tooling, right? And I had to think about that when you asked the last question as well. I always try to stick to the 3 Ps, right? The 3 Ps of people, process, and product. When you're considering fixing something, you can use these 3 Ps kind of for different kind of approaches. For example, in this case, the people, the first P, I would say you need to find out for who are you solving a pain, right? Or this could also be an audience for who are you solving a pain and what are you trying to fix. Then you need a proper, sometimes also high-level understanding of the process that you're actually solving for, right? So what needs to be done. And the last one for me always is product. So first understand why you're doing something, how you need to do it. And the last one would be which platform can support you in doing it better. And this reminds me a lot of when at Signavio, real world example, when we introduced a customer success platform to actually manage our around 3,000 customers we had back in the day, 3,000 enterprise customers, where we focused a lot on that because you can't underestimate the way and the amount of work that needs to be put into maintaining such a platform as well. Creating campaigns, creating health scores, creating different kind of models and playbooks also on these platforms. So if you want to reach an audience, a large one, you need to understand first how that would work and how to kind of create and maintain that in a feasible manner, right? Because that oftentimes and quickly gets underestimated. And if we translate that to AI tools, it's a similar way. An AI tool works exactly like any other tool will do. It fixes a problem for you, right? You will probably give some input to the data and you expect a certain output. So you need to first understand who are you providing that information for, no matter if it's a platform that improves the quality of your BDR, SDR's outreaches, if it helps your sales team improve their value-based selling model, or if it's for customer success to be prepared for renewal, expansion, or check-in calls with your customers, right? So identify the pain, understand the process, and then find out and figure out which product to use. Because I still, to this day, see way too many companies focusing on a certain product way too early without really understanding what it needs to solve and why that specific product is required to fix that. So be really thorough in your evaluation of products before picking the right one. And although I'm from the vendor space, I'm always a supporter of the idea, if you don't know why to pick a certain product, try without it first. Try with a proper process, try working around it, and then find a product which serves actually and solves your pain that you identified.
I really, can I just step in here?
Please.
As someone who worked at a customer success platform in the past, I can't love what you're saying enough, Stephen, because sometimes we think that the tool is going to solve our issues, but when you don't have specific things in place, then it makes it really hard. So for example, if we're considering a customer success platform, but we don't have analytics that a tool like ChartMogul can get us, and it makes it really hard for us to have any data to work off of this customer success platform, which can get enriched with data that comes from a tool. So yeah, I agree with you. Starting with that process first is the way to go. And then we can think about tools, because tools, they can help us, but once we've already helped ourselves.
That was also, my experience that really resonates with me is when I implemented for the first time a customer success platform. I ended up realizing that I had a lot of blind spots where I needed to actually do quite a bit more research on the customer journey, where I could see there were some blanks when I understood how I needed to implement a customer success platform. And that really, I think, is the same with AI, where I feel like it could magnify your problems if you don't really understand the customer journey well, because you will actually probably annoy customers more. We know like that our mind space is very limited, and we want to send messages at the right cadence, but also that they are meaningful. And that's something that a tool won't solve, whether it's marketing automation, sales automation, or customer success automation. Doing that groundwork and having that understanding of process, of how it looks like, and really understanding your customers well, and where you're providing value, and how customers onboard, where they are actually like pain points in the onboarding. That all needs to be thought out first, and that is actually like quite a bit of hard work from my experience, to really dig in, talk to customers a lot, seeing like how they use the product, and then one can start thinking about automation. And I also, like, my advice is always to do everything that you're trying to automate in a manual way first, and you actually learn a lot. And it might be a bit painful to try to do that, but then I think one actually sees sometimes that the hypothesis that one has is wrong. So I find that is also was for me very, very helpful.
And little addition to that, because it just fits quite well, is talk to the people that actually have the pain, right? Talk to the people on the ground, talk to the CSMs, the AE, SDR, whatever problem you're trying to fix, right? And talk to them and identify what helps, and involve them ideally in the process improvement, in the tool selection, in some pilots for that. Try it in a small way, right? Try it with a pilot phase, with a pilot cohort of customers, whatever you want to do. But yeah, involve the people that are in the end working with it, right? Because change management, especially with products, is still not done in the way that guarantees a successful launch of a product. I see way too many fail, and way too many companies buying several tools until it's actually running successfully.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something where I feel the value of networking and talking to other CS leaders who have done something similar and who are a bit further along. It gave me invaluable advice and saved me a ton of time that one could also, of course, gain through experience, but that could also be a bit of a painful journey. So if one can avoid some of that, there's a lot of experience out there, and I found that other CS leaders are often very open to connecting as well. So brings me to my next question. How do you see the CS landscape changing now for operators or for success managers particularly? What do you think are the skills that they will need to focus on to stay competitive in this new landscape? Diana, what do you think? Steven, you have something?
You're ready. Go for it.
No worries. I think especially understanding the value that you want to provide becomes more and more important, right? So when we saw something happening in the CS space over the last years, it's first, the one very apparent thing is the whole revenue discussion has become something of a no-brainer in customer success, right? Many in our community over the years discussed, okay, what is actually meant by revenue ownership in customer success? And then many of us who've been in the space for a while said, well, we own the net retention component, or we own the success qualified lead process, or whatever in that area. And this is already part of a revenue responsibility, right? And some, by surprise, found out that there were teams out there which didn't have any kind of revenue responsibility for that, right? So we kind of went ahead of that, and this has kind of find its way into the mindset of the community quite well. So I think the next step where we're in right now is basically repeating a few of the learnings that we seen in sales many years ago, which also to this day hasn't found its full way into all sales teams, is the topic of value and value-based selling and understanding the true impact, the ROI you actually having with your customers, and measuring the results that you're driving, right? And I think oftentimes it's communicated and discussed too much with the emphasis on strategy and being strategic as a CSM and understanding your customer strategy and understanding their strategy in full. I think it's more about really understanding, why does somebody decide to buy a product? What pain are they trying to solve? How do they measure it internally? And if you, for example, ask the person that decided to buy a certain product at your customer side, if you ask them, okay, how did the budgeting for this work? How did you convince your CFO? Of course, it's not always a CFO. How did you convince your company to actually buy this product? And why hasn't this information found its way through the company, right? And I think this is really where you need to get, how we call it, prescriptive about it, because in an ideal world, right, if we see customer success as the thing it's supposed to be, as something that the whole company understands and is living and breathing, then there would be a point in time in your sales process where there's a case built, right? And everybody's very sure what the customer wants to do with it and what they want to achieve. And then you could say, hey, we have a value journey, because later on in customer success, these business reviews that sadly some companies still do without having a proper reason for it, right? Just for doing it. In this case, you would actually have a reason to do that, because we estimated that at month 6, 9, 12, for example, we would probably achieve certain goals with the customer. And you can get into a rhythm of shared accountability where the customer needs to know what they have to do. Your team knows how to support the customer to get there, and then figure out if those goals were achieved. So becoming way more consultative in your approach. And I think a lot of us who've come from a similar space, right? Process management was a very complex field. CSM tools are a complex field. ChartMogul is a very complex product, right? And others are where you need to understand the methodology and the approach to the topic. We've all been probably more on the consultative side. If you've done customer success in, just an example, e-commerce, for example, there's usually not a comparable amount of methodology in the approach, and it's mostly about measuring the revenue and measuring the output that your customers can generate. So I think the whole success community will move way more towards that consultative approach, because the AI will make it much easier for everybody to get a bit of feedback on what they should achieve, right? And customers can basically type in, what product am I using? What is my pain? What am I supposed to achieve? And they might get quite solid answers, right? Not comparable to a proper CSM, but the quality will all be there. And a few partners of mine, we built actually a few prototypes with that, right? Really trying the AI to understand company websites, roles, certain challenges, and the results that are provided. We tested that with a few companies, and some of their CEOs actually said, hey, I wish all of my CSMs could provide me with these answers when I ask them tough questions at the coffee machine, right? So this kind of shows you that the level goes up, and the way you need to understand your product, your customer case, and the desired outcomes goes up quite a bit.
I would argue that now we're in a phase where it's customer success on normal mode, where before it was customer success on easy mode in some regards, where there was more money going around and actually providing value was not as high of a priority, where now companies are looking very closely of where do we get value from. And then as a CSM, being really product focused and being a product expert, that was also not always the norm, where you actually are a product champion and you know more than the customer about the product, and can actually see with things like AI, like where there are gaps in their usage, and can close the gap between the value that they can attain and that they are attaining right now. Diana, what do you think?
Yeah, I like what you said about kind of the easy mode, and now this is the hard mode. Stephen and I were talking about our kids playing video games. So Stephen, you and I are now entered the Minecraft where everybody's actually playing and you have to try not to get killed. But basically, there's this one article that I read a couple of months ago by Rav Dhaliwal, and he talks about the opportunity for customer success. In that, he talks about what Stephen was alluding to, which is like, we need to really step into our revenue era, because it's really bitten us in our backside to be very much aligned with relationship. And it's, we've been questioned about, what is it that you do? What is it what are you here for? To make customers happy, to put a smile on their face? Like, we're not paying you all this money to do that. So that's the one thing. It's like alignment to revenue. But in order for us to do that, there are all these skills that we need to develop so that we can fully step into that. And there has been this gap for us in the CS industry between wanting to say that we own revenue and do all these revenue focused activities, but not necessarily having the time, the capacity to do all that. So I see AI coming in to help us create the time for us to actually learn, catch up with all of these revenue focused skills that we still need to develop. And what Stephen also mentioned, helping us step into being more on the consultative side. Because at this point, if we're leaving these, for example, quarterly business reviews to be like, this is how you use our product, these are the features that are coming up, talk to you in 3 months, it's just not enough anymore. That was the easy mode that Ingmar was talking about. Now it's like, here's why you bought us, here's the value that you're getting out of us, here's the additional things that you can do to get even more value out of us. By the way, it's a little extra money, but what you're gonna get out of this is X, Y, Z, and here's how I'm going to help you make that happen. That is the hard mode. That is the approach that we need to start taking. And again, AI can help make us a little more efficient so that we have the capacity to actually be like that, like do the customer success that was promised to so many of us, that we're going to be like these trusted advisors and we're going to be all proactive. And the reality is a lot of us have been stuck in reactive firefighting, solving client issues one at a time, and not having that ability to think past all of these day-to-day challenges that are coming our way. So when we have tools that allow us to be more efficient by helping us like craft a follow-up and we just tweak it really quickly and boom, it's gone. Be more efficient in helping me identify what are the trends that are happening within this entire segment so that I can then propose what are the steps to get you to value. Those are the time savings that we need to actually put us into action. But in the past, we have been very much just leaning on how can we survive? How can we keep them happy? How can we, be, I guess, proactive, but really I'm just firefighting all the time. So I think that's the opportunity for us, stepping into revenue, allowing AI to help us, whatever gap we have around our time, our inefficiencies, step in there, help us out. And then of course, the last piece is the skill building. You can have the trainings, but if you have your buddy, your ChatGPT, which I speak to it more than I like to admit. Sometimes I'm talking to ChatGPT about what am I going to cook for dinner, help me with relationship advice, and also tell me what it means to be a Libra rising. I'm having all sorts of conversations with ChatGPT, but it can also help if you're like, I don't know how to ask this question on the next customer, check-in that I have. I need to know if they're going to churn or not. Well, go into ChatGPT, let it know what your issue is, and just practice. Tell ChatGPT, pretend you are the customer. This is the setting. Here's what I plan to say. Give me pros and cons of my approach, or let's just like role play. So that's what I'm excited about. Those are the opportunities that I see for all of us.
And if I may jump in again, one off topic and one on topic. First off topic, I really loved what you said. And also regarding GPT, I think nobody needs to feel bad. We're all talking to it. And just rewatch the movie Her from a few years ago, and you will not feel very weird, right? Because it's actually become reality. And secondly, I think with customer success, we're now at a point where you could say, some should have been careful what they wished for, right? I just listened to a podcast last week of Signavius founder Gero. He mentioned in a podcast actually that I already annoyed everybody like 10 years ago about this customer success is not a function. Customer success is a strategy. We all need to think customer success. And I think we're there now. Mm-hmm. But with that, a lot of expectation has arrived, right? Whoever has had a C role and sat in a boardroom and your investors, PE, VC, whoever that is really asking you the tough questions, what value you provide, how you will get the net retention rate up, right? All these things. It's great, of course, to be in that position, but you also need to have solid answers. And just saying, okay, yeah, our health score went up will not solve this question because, to be honest, I was in a room with 120 people recently, and the question was asked, who considers their health score to be predictive? Very few hands went up, right? Yeah. So always be realistic and also be careful what you can actually provide and bring to the table if you want a seat at the table.
Yeah. Oh, that's so true. That is so true.
And when it comes to all very data-driven people and thinking about, metrics and how we can sort of measure the impact that AI has on our work on customer success, like what are some of the metrics you think are worth to look at in that regard now?
To what Stephen was mentioning earlier about let's find the one task that we're trying to do and then let's work on that. If we approach AI in the same way, then that's how we should be measuring metrics. So in the last version of my newsletter, Strategic CS Labs, I always add a section about how to measure this. So for example, if I'm using ChatGPT to help me write like a marketer, but I'm a CSM, then what I want to measure are things like open rate, response rate, if they're taking action. So it's breaking down little things like that to help me form this bigger picture that's going to then contribute to the outcome. If I'm having ChatGPT or any tool analyze data for me, then it's how long did I save on analyzing this data and what was the outcome that I was hoping to get out of the data that I analyze and the action that I want my customers to take, my team to take. So I think having very clear goals around why am I using this tool and what is the metric that I can tie to it to help me make sense of, am I missing the mark or am I on track with what I'm trying to do? Now, if you're using a tool for example, the co-pilot feature in ChatGPT. I love what Stephen mentioned earlier about like, if you have this really big company and this investment that you're doing, and I think Ingmar, you mentioned that too, there is a big time sink that you need to put into this before it actually works. So for a tool like that, if we're putting in all of this time to operationalize it, then how much time or how many hits is it getting? How many times are people using it? Back to the change management topic, is this something that we're actually adopting? So I think that there's a lot of different ways that we can measure depending on what role you are playing. So operations might look at consumption, whereas CS might look at productivity. And then for that CS leader, it's about rolling up all of those different metrics to have some sort of calculation that lets you know, like, my team's being more efficient, or we are following these processes, or whatever it is that you're using AI for.
That's some really good advice, to be very specific so that you can actually tie the outcome back to your action. Essentially, the more specific one can get about your reporting, the easier it is to actually understand the result. I completely agree with that. Stephen, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Honestly, nothing to add, Diana. That was a perfect response. I would just add that I'm a big fan of trying to focus on customer metrics, right? So really focusing what you're changing for customers. We specifically in this question focused on the internal perspective, and on that aspect, there's absolutely nothing to add. Perfect answer.
Well, thank you.
Like in terms of to finish things off, we just have a few minutes left. Are there any? We've talked a bit about pitfalls, but when you think about, what should our audience like try to avoid when it comes to AI that could actually do more hurt than it can help? What would you say that would be?
I've got one answer, and it's if you're using AI as your default to write all your emails, please stop. That is the pitfall, because then we all just become robots hitting people's inbox, and it's not going to be pretty. We're already seeing it in the recruitment space, where a lot of recruiters are like, I know immediately this thing was written by ChatGPT. We still want to preserve our uniqueness, our humanness, our identity, the way that we speak. Those are all value adds, and why we still get to keep our jobs as customer success professionals. So let's try not to work our way out of our job by letting this robot write everything for us. It doesn't have a soul.
What about you,
I would
Stephen?
add, just look at the recent CNET review of Apple Intelligence, and the little part about summaries of iMessages, and the little warning they give you on relationship messages, and if you should use the summaries. Just watch it. It's very, very funny. You might miss some nuances, right? But overall, I think you just mentioned in the last question, I think you mentioned something important. We should all look at it as basically an augmentation of the CSMs, right? So AI should be an augmentation and accelerator of things we're able to do nowadays, and try to improve it, right? Use it as a sparring partner. Use it as a system to provide you with ideas to maybe streamline certain messages, right? But as Diana said, don't use it as a tool that basically writes the whole message, the whole article, or something like that. I think that's super helpful. And I think a common pitfall I see as well is thinking too much in a silo. So something I do nowadays, I talk in practice, in my day job, I talk very rarely about customer success. What we usually talk about is customer value. We talk a bit about go-to-market, but mostly we're talking very holistically about your company and what you understand in terms of the value that you're providing to your customers. And for that, we try to remove the silos completely. And in customer success speak, we, of course, look a bit at the customer journey. We try to understand only what the customer is doing. to the few people that are left that still think that, no, the customer journey is not your perspective, it's solely the customer perspective. Then we try to understand the value framework, right? What value are we actually providing? And then I think the important piece is how I call it the engagement model that you put below the customer journey. And for this one, I always tell my customers, ignore roles, ignore silos, ignore teams. First, understand what needs to be done at what point in time to improve the customer journey of everybody that's bought your product. And from that point on, try to understand what roles, what silos, not silos, right? What roles you might require, what teams you might require, and that get an understanding. Do you need an onboarding role? Do you need a renewal manager? Do you need a success manager? Or maybe you need a proper professional services team because your product is just so complex to implement, right? And then think it from that point before falling into the trap of, I say, easy advice of just following a very simple playbook and thinking that's the right way to go. Because Diana probably agrees, we've looked at this for many, many years, and very few companies are comparable in the way they should build their whole team, in the way they should look at their metrics, in the way they should measure the impact for the customers, right? It's usually a quite unique approach. So that's why I sometimes get a bit of a cringe when I see some of the LinkedIn posts mentioning the 7 things you need to do in customer success, because to me, that's mostly 6 different ones for each company, and then maybe 1 that's aligned. But yeah, sorry for the long answer.
I gotta go delete some posts. No, I'm kidding. I agree with you.
Me probably as well.
From what I've heard in our discussion, I feel a lot of the automation value AI brings right now is a bit more on the back end, where there's a lot of value that it can add right now internally. But when it comes to actually having a customer interact with AI, I think one has to be quite a bit more careful. And there's the temptation that leaders might come to their, or CEOs or C-level might come to their CS leaders and say, oh, like now with AI, can't we just, just reduce our headcount and do this and that? And I think this is something where one can easily push back if one shows the evidence and you're actually trying out these tools and you're benchmarking against the ability of a person and that experience. And I would say that in B2B SaaS, it's sort of a luxury right now that we can actually be people powered. There are more resources there. Where in B2C, there might be some valid use cases already, but I would say a really well-run team is like a competitive advantage, like really good CSMs. They bring so much value to the relationship, to the customer, that this is not something that I feel will be automated away anytime soon. And that I'd like to end on a quote that I found. This is from a report, The State of AI in Customer Success. This is the Gainsight's SVP of Product Management, and he said, despite its technological roots, AI is a path to more human-centric interactions. So we're working to ensure that AI enhances rather than replaces human connections. Because at the end of the day, humans are still best at navigating nuanced conversations. You need that skill to truly get the most value. I'd like to, thank you both for joining the session. And this was really fun.
Thanks, Ingmar. Great chatting with you all.
Ciao.
Have a good day, everybody. Bye-bye.